In this lesson, I want to address a potential pitfall when we study, and that is what I'll call a study illusion, that we think easy retrieval must be the result of strong memories. Now, in previous lessons, we learned a little bit about this flow chart. So we have the learning journey. We're learning stuff, and our working memory system is processing information. And what we hope to do is to store information in our long-term memory system in the cerebral cortex. But whether we have weak or strong memories in the cortex will depend on the quality of our studying. So we want to use these techniques over here on the right: deep processing, repetition, spacing. You'll recall the deep processing tasks are the ones that produce a memory advantage. And we did 2 psychology experiments showing the effect that a difference in brain processing can have on the recall for words. So evaluating words, pleasant or unpleasant, led to a memory advantage compared to counting syllables, and drawing a word led to a memory advantage compared to simply writing the word. So deep processing tasks, basically, they're involving more brain activity. We're doing more thinking. We're using wider parts of the cerebral cortex when we process the information, and that gives the brain a better chance to store and retrieve information later. Another key study technique is repetition. As we will learn, when we grow stronger synapses between brain cells in the cerebral cortex, that's how we're storing stronger and stronger memories. So when we repeat our study sessions, studying the same information repeatedly, we're giving our brain a chance to grow those synapses even stronger to make strong memory traces in the cerebral cortex. In addition, spacing then is critical if we want to install strong memory traces, because when we space out our study sessions, studying each day, we get the benefits of sleep in between our study sessions, and we will be learning the key role that sleep plays in memory processing. There's a key structure called the hippocampus will be critical in strengthening the memory traces in the cerebral cortex, and this memory processing happens during sleep, and we call it consolidation. We're going to strengthen the cortical memory traces during sleep, and there's a critical role for the hippocampus in that process. So when we space out our study sessions, we are allowing our brain to get the benefits of consolidation during sleep. And that's when we are attempting to make long-lasting growth in those synapses in the cortex so that we have our knowledge well stored. Now, when it comes time for the test or the quiz, what we're attempting to do is to reactivate the memory traces for the information. So the test question will be processed by the working memory system, and then we're going to search our long-term system to hopefully to reactivate those very memory traces that are storing the information. And if we successfully reactivate those memory traces, load it up into the working memory system, then we'll have the conscious experience of retrieving the information, and we can answer the test question. It's time to consider the study illusion. Now, we need to remind ourselves that making strong memories takes time. So the process that installs knowledge into our cerebral cortex is a biological growth process, and that takes time. And in fact, much of this is happening during sleep. Now, if this growth is happening during sleep, then during a study session itself, the long-lasting growth has not happened yet. So we need to make a distinction between what we're doing when we're studying, we're processing information in our short-term memory system, but the growth that is required in the long-term system hasn't yet occurred. So let's take a look at the journey again. Here we are, we're studying, and let's say it's early in the learning process. So I'm going to have weak memory traces for the information I'm studying in my long-term memory system, but I am currently processing the information. Now, an interesting thing about how our brain is operating, that if I've just recently looked over the information or read the information, learned the information, I'm going to enjoy easy retrieval for that information, even though I haven't really made strong gains in the strength of the memory trace in the cortex. In a sense, then, that whatever we were just processing, that information is temporarily more easily accessible. And the way we might explain this is that the memory traces in the cortex, while in absolute terms are weak, they enjoy a temporary increase in synapse strength. So these weak memory traces appear strong to us. So if we've just been processing the information, we enjoy easy retrieval. Scientists think that's because even a weak memory trace can appear strong due to a temporary increase in synapse strength. But this is a temporary increase. We haven't yet gone to sleep to make the long-lasting changes to synapses. And we're going to call this the working memory boost. Whatever it is that we were just studying, we will have easy retrieval for that because of the temporary increase in synapse strength that makes even weak memory traces appear strong. Now that means that our easy retrieval during a study session has two possible explanations. It could be the working memory boost that a weak memory trace is temporarily stronger, or we might in fact have strong memory traces there. But that's unlikely early in the study approach to this information. If I've just started learning this information, I very likely don't have strong memory traces yet. So the easy retrieval is more likely due to a weak memory trace temporarily made stronger. So we want to be careful. We don't want to mistake the working memory boost for strong long-term memory. Now, how can we defeat the illusion? Here we go. We take a study break. We self-test after a delay, ideally after sleep, because then we want to let the working memory boost decrease, right? So showing the dashed lines here. And then we can test the strength of our long-term memories directly. Do we have strong or weak memory traces in our cortex? So another way of saying this is that to find out whether we have information well stored in our long-term system, we have to test our long-term memory in the dormant state. And by dormant, we mean that the memories have not been recently activated. In fact, most of our knowledge, by far the vast majority of our knowledge, exists in dormant memory traces. These are just patterns of strengthened synapses that represent the learned information, but we're not, retrieving all this information all the time. But it's there, it's stored. If we reactivate a memory trace, then we don't have a dormant memory anymore. The dormant memories are ones that we haven't recently activated, so then we can test the strength of those things. And then we'll see that the ability to retrieve dormant memories is the hallmark of knowing something. So if I can retrieve information after a delay or the next day, I'm testing my long-term memory system. If I'm successful in retrieving that information, then I can conclude that I've got some reasonably strong memory traces in my long-term system. So lots of students suffer from a misconception about learning. We may believe that the ease of retrieval during a study session is a good measure of the long-term storage of the information. And that might be false. Ease of retrieval is likely the result of recent processing, what I was calling the working memory boost. Ease of retrieval is only a good measure of the long-term storage if used after a delay, especially sleep. The short-term memory system is different from the long-term memory system. We need to know this to be effective learners. We don't want to mistake the gains from a short-term memory boost, the working memory boost. We don't want to then mistake that for having strong long-term memories. And to wrap up this lesson on the study illusion, we want to be careful when using rereading as a study technique, and we'll see that we should be using a lot of retrieval in our study approach. Rereading has some dangers associated with it. When we reread information, we use recognition as a measure of knowledge. The information becomes more and more familiar, which leads to the perception that understanding is high. And then we are really confident that we know the information, but familiarity is not the same as the ability to retrieve. Understanding something is not the same as remembering it later on. We might become overconfident and we stop studying too early and we fail to test ourselves later. Now, why would we fail to test ourselves? Because we think we already know it. We had easy recognition of the information. We understood the stuff, so we think we then know it. And then, in addition, we forget that we might forget later on. So this is a metacognition problem when we're studying. When we think we know something in the moment, then we make a judgment that what I know right now, I will know later on, and we might be mistaken. There is a better way, and that's to use retrieval. So when we use retrieval, it changes the information the brain uses to assess knowledge. And so now judgments of learning are based on the ease or difficulty of retrieving information from dormant memory traces, a measure that better predicts future performance. And remember, by retrieving after a delay, so take a break in your study sessions, or ideally study each day so you get sleep in between, we make it more likely that the memory traces are in the dormant state. So that's the purpose of the delay. The working memory boost during the study session is no longer in effect after a delay. In addition, we should note that retrieval success or failure helps us have more accurate metacognition. And this is something that is a benefit to retrieval versus rereading. When I'm rereading information, I feel like I know it. It's familiar. I feel like I understand it, but it's just boosting my confidence. I can't tell whether I really do know it unless I test myself later on. And retrieval, of course, is that very process. We are testing ourselves. So if I fail to retrieve, now I know that I don't know. If I'm successful during retrieval, now I know that I do know. So for psychologists, there's a clear winner when it comes to these two study techniques. We want to be using lots of retrieval practice. Now, there is a time and place for rereading, especially if we fail to retrieve. We're going to need to reprocess information. But let's summarize then with the following. When we're rereading, the information is easily accessible in the short-term memory system, so that gives us the impression that we think we know it. But students can become overconfident and they stop studying too early and then don't self-test. Why would you self-test if you already think you know it? Retrieval practice, the information is less accessible in the long-term memory system early on. And so this means that we are likely to be failing to retrieve early in the learning process, and that can actually cause underconfidence. We feel like we're not learning as well as if we were just rereading. But we're going to see the evidence shows that retrieval is the better study technique. So students are getting accurate feedback because we know whether we succeed or fail. We know what we know and we know what we don't know. Hopefully that'll motivate us to relearn, reprocess the information. And if we use retrieval practice repeatedly, we are giving our brain a chance to really strengthen long-term memory traces so the retrieval will become more and more reliable over time, and that should reduce anxiety. So if we are successfully retrieving information from our long-term memory system, that will give us confidence that we can retrieve it again on the day of the test.